This is a story about the bad and the brave, and how an investigator on a dark journey exposes shocking secrets at the heart of the South African National Defence Force. It's a story that starts on the Cape Coast and then takes him from Simonstown in the Western Cape to Phalaborwa in the north, and then to a military base in Pretoria. While still unresolved, the investigation exposes a grouping of elite soldiers and SANDF officials who appear to operate above the law, engaging in illegal campaigns involving torture, politics, spycraft, and even murder. And the first clue came with the arrival of the mysterious vessel at the Simonstown Naval Base on the night of the 6th of December, 2022. The investigator, 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆, is an anti-corruption activist and researcher rolled into one, with experience in documenting the movement of weapons.
We work like investigative journalists, but we're slightly different. We investigate economic crime where there's a link to human rights abuse. We investigate, we publish those findings.
So the long-lens evidence of cargo being loaded off and possibly onto this vessel, a US-sanctioned Russian cargo ship called the Lady R, was of great interest to 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆. Its arrival had put local ship spotters on high alert. In the absence of official information, public speculation as to why the Lady R had dropped anchor grew to fever pitch. Images were circulated showing vehicles standing by.
We were able, through some sources, to obtain a copy of a photograph, but this time the number plates were clear. And with that number plate, we were then able to start searching where else might this vehicle have appeared.
And bingo! 3 weeks later, one of the same cars with an identical number plate was captured by CCTV cameras in another province.
It's extraordinary that we find the same vehicle, a white Mercedes-Benz. We were able to establish through photographs that we obtained that it's registered against a front company, if you like, a shell company. That front company's directors are all members of a special forces unit in Phalaborwa.
Peters Communication Trust is the unlikely name of this company, which is registered to the SANDF Special Forces, an elite brigade of highly trained combatants, colloquially known as the 𝗀𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗍. In what seemed to be an uncanny coincidence, one of their vehicles was documented in Gauteng.
What we then found out is that the same vehicle was on the scene of the abduction of a suspected Islamic State member in the Mall of Africa, only 3 weeks later on the 29th of December.
𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆's story now lurches in an unexpected direction. But bizarrely, this unexplained kidnapping provides clues to truths that until now have been lurking in the shadows. This is one of the busiest malls in Gauteng. People come here from all over to do their shopping. And in December 2022, an Ethiopian man and his bodyguard disappeared into thin air. One moment, he was paying for his parking ticket, and the next moment, he was gone. Panicking, the family of the missing man, 𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗴𝗶, got hold of CCTV footage and tracked his movements to see who was on his tail, and hired a lawyer, 𝗀𝗃𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗆.
Last time our client was seen was at the pay station, and directly behind him, a few seconds later, was the actual member of Special Forces who paid for 3 tickets of their vehicles at the same time. We believe he was then followed to his vehicle. There were those vehicles waiting in the parking lot, and that's where he was abducted from.
The SANDF admitted that Special Forces were at the Mall of Africa on that day under the command of a Major 𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗃𝗏𝗏, who paid for the parking tickets. But the SANDF denied kidnapping 𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗆 and his bodyguard.
They claim that they were there on a training exercise. So you have a training exercise being conducted in a public space in a mall without anyone's knowledge. Now, that to us is totally unbelievable.
We know very little about this Ethiopian businessman, save that he was listed on a United States sanctions list as a financier for the Islamic terrorist group ISIS. 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗵 managed to get the police to investigate in what looks to him suspiciously like a state-sanctioned abduction.
It's the making of a rendition. I mean, this reminds one of apartheid-style tactics, you know, where you simply kidnap an individual and that's it. That's the last time you hear or see of them.
But the 𝗶𝗿𝗲𝗍 investigation experienced setbacks. First, when the elite investigative unit, the Hawks, sought the cell phone records of the Special Forces members photographed in the Mall of Africa, they met with resistance in court from the SANDF. And then, on the 6th of August, the investigator on the case, Lieutenant Colonel 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝘀, was assassinated.
He was driving along the highway north of Pretoria, close to 𝗗𝗵𝗶𝘀. He was booked out that night to investigate specifically the role of special forces in the abduction of these individuals in the Mall of Africa. And he was shot, from what we understand, having his vehicle.
It was a sophisticated hit, which in itself was a clue as to who may have pulled the trigger. Shooting someone from a moving vehicle is incredibly difficult. Hitting them twice in the head means you're an elite-level marksman. That should tell you who we're dealing with.
We are dealing with dangerous individuals who can do anything, it seems, as they please. You know, they seem to be above the law.
Back at Open Secrets, Henny sensed there was worse to come.
At that stage, we started to identify a pattern of abuse and criminality. We believe, according to eyewitnesses and sources, that involves senior generals. It's a pattern of abuse and human rights violations, of torture and murder that involves members of special forces.
It was like a Russian doll. In the Lady R cover-up, there was a link to a mysterious abduction. Then came the assassination of the Hawks investigator, and the next revelation took Henny back in time to a military base in Littleton, Pretoria, from where on the 23rd of December 2019, 18 R4 assault rifles had been stolen. This theft embarrassed the SANDF publicly, and behind the scenes, according to Henny's sources, the military special forces got to work to retrieve the stolen weapons and bring the culprits in.
You know, when we were looking at the role of special forces, we had various whistleblowers who approached Open Secrets. And those whistleblowers, there are a number of them. Many of them work within the state. Some of them have been in state security forces previously. But they had different stories to tell, and those stories came together to support this, what we've now come to as an understanding of the operation of a torture squad within the South African National Defence Force.
As the story of the weapons hunt unfolds, Henny is given an eyewitness account of another alleged abduction involving the same Special Forces operative, Major Penny Sunnyboy Wambi, around 6 weeks after the theft of the rifles.
They have Defence Force intelligence officials who, according to our sources, are guiding them to find someone's cell phone. So again, there's illegal surveillance that's taking place. So you have this convoy of vehicles that's making its way along parts of the East Rand.
According to a whistleblower, they abduct a man known only as 𝗵𝗵𝗀 from a fast food restaurant in Kempton Park. There, they allegedly force him into their vehicles. It's hard to imagine the military rolling in here to abduct someone. This is a family-friendly space. It's meant to be a safe zone in the Kempton Park CBD. It's alleged that the Special Forces takes 𝗵𝗵𝗀 back to the military police bar, where they torture him to death that same night. All of this is an illegal operation.
Every element of this is criminal. There's nothing here that's normal. Everything is abnormal. It's anti-constitutional.
Henny was then approached by a former security operative who had a few weeks later been lured to Pretoria under the pretext of identifying a culprit in this same theft of military weapons. Now in hiding, 𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 was prepared to talk to us too. He said we could use his name, but not show his face for fear of being found. He alleges he was summoned by an SANDF officer who is now the Chief of the Army, General 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗶𝗀𝗆 himself.
General 𝗀𝗶𝗀𝗆 called me and said, "Pule here, we need your assistant and profiling of a person." He's a former operative also in the security structure. They need to identify him, and they said he was involved in the military base robbery. I was a bit scared.
When 𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 arrived in Pretoria, he parked his car across the road and told them that he had arrived at the Bosman station by bus. They told him to wait at that hotel. So he did, and a little later they called again and told him to go to a nearby shop and walk around for 20 minutes. He thinks that's when they were scoping him out to see if he came alone. Then finally, they made contact. From the Victoria Hotel, 𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 says he was driven in a convoy of cars to the military base, 𝗃𝗏𝗀𝗃𝗏𝗃, then taken to an office by a female major.
She left me there and said I must sit there. They took my phone, my tablet, and the bags, left with them.
𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 claims 𝗵𝗏𝗃 and other senior military officials then asked him to make a false statement to the police. They wanted him to implicate a senior politician whose name we know in the rifle robbery, a serious crime. And alarmed, 𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 declined the dirty tricks mission and asked to go home. Did they say anything after you said no?
They said, no, Major, call your guys so that they can squeeze his balls. They came in after the major went to call them and started hitting me. In the presence of the general, colonel, brigadier, everyone was there.
So you passed out?
I passed out. When I wake up, I was in hospital.
Which hospital?
Kalafo.
As his medical records testify, 𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 awoke dizzy and battered, but he alleges they were not finished with him. Claiming that he was a high-level suspect, they took him back to 𝗃𝗏𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃 and tried again to coerce him to take the job.
I still went and said no. Then that's when an intense torture happened. The biggest torture, being beaten, being kicked.
Just try to describe it for me.
I was choked.
What's that?
Poured water on you so that they can, like, you drown. They stopped, give you a minute or less. They put a big tube over your face, beat you on top of that tube, kick you everything. And came a time when I said to them, okay, I'll need time to think.
Who was doing this to you?
The guys in balaclavas.
𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 told us the men in balaclavas held him for 5 days. On the last day, an official from a different security agency arrived at the base and facilitated his release, giving the broken man a bus ticket and some cash for the road home. The SANDF is notoriously tight-lipped about its secrets. But in this instance, keeping allegations of criminality under wraps is proving difficult for its top brass. That's partly because victims and witnesses are coming forward to seek justice. After a buildup of complaints, The SANDF set up a board of inquiry which has taken evidence on allegations of SANDF crimes that took place between 2017 and 2022. Corruption, collusion, assault, and torture. But the chief of the SANDF has failed to act on this report. According to sources, it may make an adverse finding against the chief of the military police, Rear Admiral 𝗵𝗶𝘶𝗵𝗶𝘀. So in November, the SANDF's most senior military policeman, Chief Warrant Officer Raphael Ndau, sidestepped his own employer and reached out to the head of AfriForum's private prosecution unit, 𝗀𝗲𝗃𝗃.
He exhausted all internal processes, and he then said, that's enough. You know, he's a brave man, he's got no tolerance for corruption, and he said something must happen, and I agree with him.
Nel has written a letter urging the chief of the Defense Force to act on the recommendations of the inquiry. It's understood that there are at least 20 boxes of evidence.
Well, they were looking at corruption with the PPE purchases, procurement fraud, the fact that certain investigations were not proceeded with because people were sheltered from prosecution. And then disturbingly, also that people were tortured and that people lost their lives during investigation. So that was disturbing.
Henny has his own growing dossier detailing allegations of SANDF criminality. 𝗶𝗲𝗃 can identify individuals who he alleges were present during his torture ordeal. Major Doris 𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃, Rear Admiral 𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃, the head of the military police, and other high-ranking officers who tried, he says, to get him to lie under oath for the sake of a political plot.
What condition were you in on the last day of your torture?
I couldn't see properly. My eyes were partially closed. I think the left one, yeah, it was closed. This one, it was reddish, full of blood. I was shaking, all of those things.
How have you been recovering?
I haven't fully recovered. First thing of memory loss, my eyes, my hand, my nerves.
What's wrong with your hand?
Because of the torture, I'll get tremor most of the time.
Since 1994, South Africa has been a constitutional state with a Bill of Human Rights. But the allegation of illegal activity by the SANDF Special Forces raises memories of state-sponsored criminal operations under apartheid.
We've seen what kind of abuse the military can get involved in. And I think we're seeing shades and similarities here that mean that we need to look and scrutinize the military, not as the enemy of the people. There are many good military officials out there, but we need to recognize where there is that abuse, and it is happening, that we need to stop that.
Henny's investigation reveals a dark underworld in the SANDF. His evidence suggests that at least some of South Africa's most elite soldiers have been deployed to undermine the Constitution and not defend it.